I pick the place on purpose. Not for the view. Not for peace. I pick it because nothing gets in or out without effort, and signals die here the same way sound dies in deep snow. A bowl of rock and timber tucked behind two ridgelines, a narrow creek cutting through the middle, and a strip of flat ground that stays hidden from the valley roads. I have been here before on a hunting trip years back, noticed my phone turned into a useless brick, and filed it away in my head. Back then it felt annoying. Now it feels valuable. The drive starts before sunrise. I roll out of my rental house with the truck already loaded, so no neighbor sees the late panic packing. Fuel cans, a tote of tools, another tote of food that looks normal from the top, with the heavy stuff buried under, a roll of plastic sheeting, 2 tarps, nails, screws, a handsaw, axe, shovel, pry bar, a cheap come-along winch, extra rope, a filter pump, spare socks, gloves, a headlamp, batteries. I keep the list tight. Too much means slow. Slow means stuck. The news has been wrong for days, and it keeps changing tone. First, it is isolated incidents. Then it is stay calm. Then it is footage of people running in a parking lot, shaky phone video, someone screaming off camera, and a reporter saying the same sentence 3 times because a producer keeps talking in her ear. The part that bothers me is not the images. It is the certainty. Every channel sounds sure of itself, even when 2 channels disagree on the same basic facts. I stop at a gas station outside town and keep the engine running. There is a line, but it is loose and weird, with people drifting in small clusters and leaving gaps between cars. A man in a work shirt waves his arms and points at the price sign, arguing with nobody in particular. A woman tries to pour gasoline into a plastic storage bin, and a clerk stands in the doorway yelling at her. I do not join any conversations. I keep my head down, pay, fill, leave. The credit card machine works, for now. On the highway, I pass 2 wrecks that look fresh. No emergency lights. No police. Cars pulled off at angles that do not make sense unless somebody panicked and forgot the steering wheel. I keep a lot of distance in front of me and leave the lane open next to me whenever possible. I watch mirrors more than the road ahead. A crash out here means strangers walking up on me, and I do not want strangers close. My phone still has service for a while. Enough to see an alert flash, then another, then a third, stacking over each other. Shelter in place, avoid crowds, curfew in certain counties. Then the feed fills with arguments, people calling it fake, people posting proof from old disasters, people selling miracle supplements. The same few clips get reposted with new captions every hour. I keep my eyes on the road and let the phone sit face down on the passenger seat. The desire to keep checking it turns into a chore I refuse to do. The last town before the mountains looks half open and half abandoned. A grocery store has a line wrapped around the building. A pawn shop has a handwritten sign taped to the glass. Cash only. A church parking lot is full. A high school field has tents on it. Too many for a normal weekend event. I do not stop. I keep going. Every extra minute in a place with people is a gamble. The paved road ends. Gravel starts. Then washboard. Then a narrow Forest Service track that I have no business taking with a truck this loaded. I go slow, pick my line, and keep stopping to check the underside for leaks or hanging straps. The mountains are calm in that way that makes human noise feel rude. Wind through pine needles. Creek water far below. A hawk circling. If the world is coming apart, it is doing it out of sight for the moment. At the trailhead, there are 2 other vehicles. One is a small sedan with the doors hanging open. The other is a sport utility vehicle with a roof box, backed in hard enough that the rear tires sit in a rut. Both look hurried, not staged. I do not see people. I do not call out. I stand still and listen. Nothing answers except insects and a distant woodpecker. I lock my truck, shoulder my pack, and start moving. The first mile is a steady climb, and my legs complain. I stop twice, not because I'm out of shape, but because I need to watch the trail behind me and make sure nobody is tracking me in. Each time I stop, I step off the trail and stand where I can see without being seen. No voices, no footsteps, no metallic clink of someone carrying gear. Good. I have a pistol on my hip and a rifle strapped across my pack. I do not touch either unless needed. Touching a weapon for comfort turns into a habit, and habits get sloppy. I focus on placement of my boots, the angle of the sun, the sound of water. I force myself into tasks. Tasks keep my brain from spiraling. 2 miles in, I leave the main trail. I cut uphill through deadfall, moving around logs instead of climbing over them. I avoid snapping branches. I stop to study the ground for prints. There are deer tracks, fresh. A bear print, older. No boot prints. I keep going. The bowl opens up in the late afternoon. Granite walls on 3 sides, timber thick enough that a person could vanish 10 steps in, and a creek that stays clear even in late summer. The air is cooler. The wind does not push hard in here. It settles. I stand at the edge of the meadow and watch for movement for a long time. Nothing. No birds exploding from trees. No sudden silence. Just the normal little noises that mean the woods are still the woods. I check my phone out of habit. No bars. I turn it off and put it away. I take out my small emergency radio and extend the antenna. I turn the dial. Static shifts, then fades, then returns. No voices. I try the weather band. Nothing but a faint hiss that never changes. I move 10 yards. Same. I climb onto a rock and try again. Same. The dead zone is real. It is not a theory. It is a wall you cannot see. I pick a site on the north edge of the meadow where the timberline gives cover and the ground stays high enough that spring melt will not drown me. I do not build anything tall. I do not cut live trees unless I must. I set a tarp low between 2 trunks to make a quick roof. Then I use fallen timber for a windbreak. I move slowly and keep checking the ridge edges. Every sound I make feels louder here, and that keeps me careful. Water comes first. I mark 2 collection spots, one upstream where the creek runs over rock, and one small spring that seeps out near a boulder field. I filter and boil even though it looks clean. I set a latrine area downhill and downwind and mark it with a small cairn so I do not get careless later. I pack out what I can and burn what I must, but I keep fires small, short, and hidden under canopy when possible. Food comes next. I inventory everything on a ground cloth, then put it away in a tight system. A week of easy eating that I refuse to take. Rice, beans, oats, canned meat, peanut butter, salt, coffee, powdered drink mix, a bag of hard candy I bought without thinking, then decided to keep because morale is a real thing. I count calories with a pencil on paper. Numbers do not lie, even when the news does. Before dark, I set up a perimeter without trying to be clever. A few trip lines with small bells made from scrap metal, a couple of noisy sticks stacked in ways that will fall if bumped. Nothing that screams trap, just early warning. I do not want to hurt somebody by accident. I want time to move, hide, decide. That first night, I sleep in short blocks. Not from panic, from responsibility. Every time I wake, I sit up and listen. Wind, creek, a small animal rustling, the creak of trees shifting. I check my watch, adjust the tarp when the temperature drops, and keep my boots within reach. The silence does not comfort me. It just means I am alone with my own thoughts. Morning brings work. I scout the bowl in a slow circle, keeping my tracks light and stepping on rock when possible. I find an old survey marker hammered into a stone, probably decades old. I find a narrow game trail that leads out through a rock chute on the east side. That is a potential escape route, and also a potential entry route. I memorize it. I try the radio again from 3 different spots, including halfway up the slope. Still nothing. I climb higher, sweating under my pack, and reach a ridge where I can see the valley in the distance. That is where the world should talk to me again. I extend the antenna, turn the dial, and get a faint, broken station for 2 seconds. A voice cuts in mid-sentence, then dissolves back into static. I twist the radio, hold it overhead, crouch, stand, try again. The signal slides away. The ridge is not enough. The terrain is swallowing everything. On the ridge, I see smoke far off, low and dirty. Too spread out for a campfire. It hangs over the valley and drifts sideways. I cannot tell if it is a wildfire or something else. There is no siren, no helicopter, no aircraft. Just smoke and distance. I take a long look, then force myself back down. Staring does not feed me. Staring does not keep me hidden. Back at camp, I start the real build. Not a cabin with a pretty door, a low shelter that disappears. I dig into a small rise, not deep enough to collapse, deep enough to let the earth insulate. I line the pit with logs and stones. I lay plastic sheeting under the floor to block ground moisture. I build a roof frame from deadfall, then cover it with tarp, then cover that with branches and duff. From 10 yards away, it looks like messy forest floor. I keep the entrance narrow. I hang a dark cloth inside to block light. I set a second tarp for rain catch in a spot that is not visible from the meadow, running the water into a covered barrel. I anchor everything hard, because mountain weather does not care about my plans. By evening, my hands are scraped up, and my back is tired, and I still go one more round checking trip lines before I eat. The first week is routine building. Chop wood, stack wood, haul stones, reinforce corners, test drainage with poured water, boil water, clean tools, write notes. I keep notes because memory gets slippery when days blur. I mark the date on a paper calendar, then realize I do not truly know the date anymore. My watch still shows numbers, but the world that backed those numbers is fading. On day 6, I hear something that does not belong. A distant pop, then another. Not thunder, not a branch snapping. The sound carries from the valley, muted by distance and terrain. I crouch near the edge of the timber and watch the ridgeline that leads back toward the trail. The pops come in a short cluster, then stop. I do not move for a long time. When I finally do, I move deeper into cover and keep my rifle close. That night, I do not use a fire. I eat cold food and keep the shelter closed. I check my trip lines 3 times. I keep my headlamp off and let my eyes adjust to the dim. I listen harder than I want to. Nothing comes. The valley stays far away. Still, my hands move more carefully. I wrap metal tools so they do not clink. I keep my gear organized so I do not fumble in the dark. The second week, the outside world stops trying to reach me. Not because it decided to, because the dead zone wins. I climb the ridge every other day, and sometimes I catch a shred of a station for a breath, never long enough to understand. Once I catch a single word, evacuate, then nothing. Another time I catch a man shouting and a woman crying, then static. The fragments do not help. They just prove chaos exists beyond the rock walls. I try a different method. I set up a small antenna wire between 2 trees near the ridge, run it down to the radio, and ground it with a metal stake. Old trick from a friend who used to mess with shortwave. It improves nothing. If anything, it pulls in more hiss. The dead zone is not a bad radio. It is geography, and geography does not negotiate. With no real information, I start thinking in probabilities. If the outbreak is real and spreading, roads will clog first, then fuel runs out, then emergency response shrinks, then people scatter. If people scatter, some will head into the mountains, some will hunt, some will steal. I stop thinking about zombies as a word and think about infection and behavior. Sick people, violent people, desperate people, any of them could walk up my creek. I make changes. I move my food deeper into the shelter and camouflage the storage spot. I bury a backup cache 200 yards away under stones and a log pile that looks natural. I set a strict trash system. Burn paper, pack out metal, bury nothing that animals can dig. I widen my perimeter a little and make sure my warning setups do not funnel anyone toward a cliff. I do not want bodies near me. Bodies bring attention. The first time I see infected, I do not understand what I am seeing right away. It is late afternoon. I am collecting water upstream when I hear splashing that sounds wrong, heavy and sloppy. I freeze behind a tree, keeping my body tight against bark. Downstream, two figures stumble along the creek edge. Both move with a jerky, uneven gait. One keeps bumping into the other. Their clothes are torn and wet. Faces are hard to read at distance, but posture tells the story. No scanning, no caution, no purpose beyond moving. I stay still. I do not raise the rifle. I do not want to draw attention with motion. The two figures move past my camp area without turning toward it. One stops at the creek and drops to knees, then shoves its face toward the water in a messy way, more like an animal than a person. But I stop that thought and focus on what matters. It is not drinking normally. It is not behaving normally. The other figure stands and sways, head twitching, then lurches forward again. I back away step by step, careful with foot placement. I do not run. Running makes noise. Noise draws eyes. Eyes bring problems. I reach my shelter without being seen, slide inside and close the entrance. I sit in the dark and wait. Minutes drag. A bell on one of my trip lines stays silent. The creek keeps running. Eventually, the splashing fades into distance. When I finally crawl out, the light is lower. I do a full sweep from cover, scanning the meadow edge, the tree line, the rock chute, the ridge path. Nothing. The infected did not find me, or it did not care. Both options are dangerous in different ways. I spend the rest of the evening moving supplies to quieter positions, tightening knots, checking my warning lines, and staying under cover. The next morning, I find tracks near the creek where the figures passed. Drag marks, bare footprints mixed with shredded shoes, a smear on a stone that I refuse to inspect too closely. I cover it with dirt and move on. I do not need details, I need patterns. The pattern says infected can wander into the bowl. The bowl is not a magic shield. It is only distance and terrain. That day, I change my water routine. I stop collecting near camp. I collect upstream, filter, then carry it in sealed containers. I also start washing in a separate spot. I treat everything as contaminated even when it looks clean. I do not touch my face while outside. I use gloves more. I wash hands with boiled water and soap, then let them dry fully. It is boring work. Boring keeps me alive. A few days later, I find proof of people. Not infected. People. A candy wrapper near the game trail on the east side. Fresh enough that the print still looks sharp. A boot print in mud that is not mine. The print is deep, heel heavy. Someone carrying weight. Someone tired. I kneel, study it, then erase it with a branch. I do not want my mind obsessing over it. I want my mind working. I spend the afternoon setting a new observation point, a spot in thick timber with a view of the meadow and the creek crossing, concealed behind fallen logs. I clear a small slot through branches for my eyes only. I leave no straight lines, no obvious cut ends. I sit there for hours with water and a small snack, watching. Near dusk, I see them. 2 adults and a child. The adults move cautiously. The child stays close, holding onto a jacket sleeve. Packs on backs, not huge but real. The man carries a hatchet in his hand, blade down. The woman keeps turning her head, scanning. They stop at the creek and drink fast, not filtering, not boiling. That tells me how rushed they are, or how ignorant, or how desperate. All 3 options end the same way if infection travels through more than bites. I stay hidden. I do not wave. I do not call out. I watch them cross the meadow and move toward the rock chute. The child slips once and the woman grips her arm and pulls her upright. No shouting, no dramatic scene, just quiet urgency. They disappear into the trees and the bowl swallows them. After they leave, I go to where they drank. I look at the water surface. Nothing looks different. That is the trap. Danger does not announce itself. I boil water anyway. I clean my containers. I reset my perimeter because my warning lines will not mean much if strangers learn where they are. That night, I sit inside the shelter and argue with myself in my head, because that is what isolation does. A part of me says I should have helped. A part of me says I should have chased them away. Another part says nothing, just runs through a list of outcomes. If I reveal my shelter, the bowl becomes a destination. A destination becomes a problem. If I do nothing, those 3 might die. If I help, I might die with them. I do not find a moral answer that feels clean. I find a practical answer. Stay hidden. The 3rd week turns colder at night. The creek edges gather thin ice in the mornings. I tighten the shelter roof, add more insulation with pine boughs, and start keeping the interior dry with careful ventilation. A closed shelter keeps heat in, but it also keeps moisture in. Moisture ruins bedding, then ruins sleep, then ruins judgment. I make a vent that runs through a natural gap in the log wall and exits under a thick patch of brush so it does not look like a chimney. I keep my fire small and only burn at night when smoke blends with darkness and the wind stays low. I use dry wood, not green. I do not cook anything that smells strong. I eat plain and steady. I drink water and force myself to stay on schedule. Without outside clocks, the only thing that holds me together is the routine I enforce. On day 24, I hear voices. Not from the valley. Close. Too close. A man speaking, then a woman snapping back, then a child crying. The sound moves through the timber near the meadow. I slide out of my shelter and sink into my observation point. I keep the rifle angled down until I need it. The voices come nearer, then stop. I see a different group this time. 4 adults, no children. One man has a big pack and a hunting rifle. Another has nothing in his hands and keeps rubbing his face, pacing. The woman points toward the ridge, toward the spot that leads out. She is talking fast, pushing. The man with the rifle shakes his head and points deeper into the bowl. He wants to stay. He sees water and timber and thinks he found safety. They argue in low voices, and I catch bits. No service, no way to call, roads, my brother, not going back. It is enough to confirm what I already know. The world outside is torn up. People are fleeing into places that never had infrastructure, hoping the absence of infrastructure means absence of trouble. The group spreads out to look around. One man walks toward my camp area, not directly, but in that general direction. He moves with purpose, scanning the ground, reading signs. He kneels near the creek, touches the mud, then stares at something. Probably one of my old tracks. My stomach does not twist. I do not narrate feelings. I simply move. I pull back deeper into cover and shift my position to keep distance. A bell on a trip line gives a tiny sound, barely audible. The man freezes and turns his head. He steps forward, careful now. He spots the line, then follows it with his eyes. He sees my warning setup. His face changes. He does not smile. He does not relax. He straightens and looks around with new attention. He calls out, not yelling, just projecting. "Hey, we are not looking for trouble." He waits. Nobody answers. He tries again. "If somebody is here, we just need to talk." I stay silent. Silence is a choice. I watch him from the shadows and measure what kind of man he is. His rifle is slung, not raised. His hands are open. That could mean decent. That could mean practiced. I do not have enough information to risk it. The man backs away slowly and returns to his group. He speaks to them in a tight voice. The group pulls together. The man with the big pack turns his head, scanning more aggressively now. The woman points again toward the rock chute. The pacing man wipes his mouth and keeps looking over his shoulder, quick and jumpy. They do not leave right away. They camp near the creek in the open meadow, and that tells me something too. Either they do not know how to hide, or they do not care. They build a fire before full dark, bigger than mine, and the glow pulses through the timber. I do not sleep. I watch, listen, and keep my gear ready. Late that night, the infected arrive. It starts with the pacing man. He stands up suddenly, staring into the dark beyond the firelight. The others hush him, thinking he heard an animal. Then I hear it too. Footsteps in brush. Not careful, not steady. The sound of bodies pushing through branches without flinching. The group scrambles. Somebody fumbles with a rifle. The fire throws light across faces that are wide-eyed and unprepared. The first infected stumbles into the edge of the firelight and keeps coming. Another follows, then another. Their clothes hang wrong. Their heads jerk. Their arms do not swing with normal rhythm. The woman shouts and backs away. The man with the rifle raises it, aims, fires once. The sound slams into the bowl and echoes. Birds explode out of trees. The infected do not stop. I do not rush in. I do not play hero. I move to my shelter entrance and pull the camouflage tight. I extinguish any small ember inside. I get low and stay quiet. Outside, the group is fighting for space. Another shot. Then yelling. Then the kind of struggling noise that makes my hands grip the rifle stock harder, not from adrenaline words, but from simple readiness. The infected overwhelm them fast. Not because infected are strong, because panic ruins coordination, because people trip over gear, because firelight blinds night vision. I hear a man screaming for somebody to run. I hear the woman shouting a name. Then a thud. Then more movement crashing through brush. Minutes later, the noise moves away, downhill toward the creek bend and out of my immediate area. The fire still burns in the meadow, unattended. Shadows jump, sparks rise, the smell of smoke thickens. I wait a long time before moving. When I finally crawl out, I do it slow, scanning every angle. I do not go to the meadow. I do not approach the fire. I circle wide through timber and climb to my observation point. From there, I see the wreckage without stepping into it. Packs scattered, a pot tipped over, the fire burning down into coals. No living people in sight. Movement at the far edge of the meadow, near the trees, a figure stumbling, then disappearing. Infected, or a survivor, I cannot tell. I do not chase. At dawn, I go down and clean the area the only safe way I can. I do not touch anything with bare hands. I do not take souvenirs. I kick dirt over the coals until they die. I drag scattered trash into a pile and burn what will burn. I move anything reflective out of sight. I do not want a shiny pot catching sunlight and drawing attention from miles away. I take one useful thing, and only one, a sealed, unopened water filter cartridge that fell out of somebody's pack. I wipe it down and quarantine it for days before trusting it. The cost of their presence is not just danger, it is proof. Proof that the bowl will attract people, and people will bring infected behind them. The dead zone keeps signals out, but it does not keep footsteps out. I make a hard decision after that night. I stop climbing the ridge for radio checks. Every ridge visit increases the chance someone sees me against the skyline. I stop caring about updates. Updates are poison in a place where I cannot verify anything. I focus on survival that does not rely on outside facts. I expand my shelter in small ways. A second sleeping platform to keep me off the ground. A dedicated cooking corner with a stone base. A small cash shelf for medical supplies. I check my first aid kit, count bandages, check expiration dates, then decide expiration dates do not matter much anymore. I make tincture with alcohol for cleaning. I keep soap dry and protected. Infection does not have to be the main outbreak to kill me. A small cut can do the job if I get careless. Food becomes the next problem. I cannot live on stored food forever, and hunting draws attention. Gunshots echo. I set traps instead. Simple snares on game trails, placed with gloves to reduce scent. I check them twice a day to avoid attracting predators. I catch 2 rabbits in 3 days. I clean them away from camp, bury waist deep, wash tools with boiled water. I cook meat thoroughly. I do not waste anything. I also fish with a hand line, early morning when the creek is quiet. The fish are small, but protein is protein. I smoke a few over a low, covered fire that produces minimal smoke. I store them in cloth and keep them cool. I rotate food so nothing sits too long. Every day is planning and correction. The 4th week brings another visitor. Only one this time. A woman, maybe late 20s or early 30s, moving alone and moving wrong for a healthy hiker. She limps slightly. Her pack hangs crooked. She stops often and looks behind her. I watch from my observation point and do not move. She reaches the creek, drinks hard, then sits on a rock with her head in her hands. She speaks out loud, not to anyone, just words falling out. Please, just, please. She stands again, takes 3 steps, then stumbles. Not a dramatic fall, a tired failure. She catches herself on a tree trunk, then leans there, breathing through it without sound. I do not want to help. I do not want the choice. The choice appears anyway. She is not infected, not from what I can see. Her movements are coordinated. Her gaze tracks. Her hands do not twitch. She looks exhausted and hurt, not mindless. Still, exhaustion turns people into risks. Hurt people make noise. Noise brings attention. I do the safest thing I can manage. I do not reveal my shelter. I do not step into the meadow. I take a sealed bottle of water, a small packet of food, and a roll of gauze. I wrap it all in a dark plastic bag. I wait until she stands and starts toward the rock chute. Then I move through timber on a wide arc and place the bag on a stump near her path. I step back into cover and watch. She sees it a minute later and freezes. She scans the woods, eyes sharp. "Hello?" Her voice cracks. She does not walk straight to the bag. She circles it, checking for a string, a trap, a reason. That caution lowers my fear about her. She finally picks it up, opens it, and stares at the contents. She looks back toward the woods again, then speaks softly. "Thank you." She waits. Silence answers. She leaves quickly after that, moving with a little more strength. I do not follow. I do not call out. I do not become part of her story. I stay a ghost. That night, I sit inside my shelter and feel the weight of what I am doing without dressing it up. Isolation is protection, but it also turns me into a man who watches people pass and refuses to be seen. I do not excuse it. I do not romanticize it. I simply acknowledge it. Then I check my perimeter again, because feelings do not stop infected. Time becomes strange after that. Not mystical, just repetitive. Days of work, nights of listening, weather shifts. The first real snow comes in the 6th week, a dusting that melts by afternoon. Then another storm drops 3 inches and sticks in the shadows. I start wearing layers even inside. I keep my sleeping bag dry at all costs. I build a small wood rack under cover. I split wood daily so I never face a desperate shortage. One morning I find tracks again near the east chute. Many tracks. Boots, some barefoot. Drag marks. A broken branch with fresh sap. Somebody came through fast and did not care about stealth. I move my camp into full lockdown for 2 days. No fire, no movement in open meadow. I eat cold and stay under cover. I watch and listen. On the 2nd day, I hear a distant commotion beyond the rock chute. Shouting, then a single gunshot. Then silence. I do not go toward it. Curiosity gets people killed. I wait until late afternoon. Then I climb partway up the slope to see the chute exit from a concealed angle. I see nothing moving. I see a dropped pack in the snow, half open. I see no bodies from that distance, and I refuse to go closer. That night, wind rises and trees sway. The bowl fills with a low rushing sound. It covers small noises. That is dangerous. I tighten my trip lines and add one more warning setup near the creek crossing. I keep my rifle close. I do not sleep much. I do not need a narrator voice telling me why. In the morning, I find the dropped pack has been torn open by animals. Food wrappers scattered. No sign of the owner. The situation tells its own story, and it is not a good one. Somebody ran. Somebody got chased. The bowl did not save him. It simply hid the end. The dead zone begins to feel less like a feature and more like a test. Without news, my brain tries to invent explanations. Maybe the outbreak burned through and ended. Maybe the government got control back. Maybe the cities are empty and quiet now. Maybe the valleys are full of infected, and nobody is left to broadcast anything. The problem is not picking one. The problem is realizing I could pick the wrong one and die because of it. I make rules to replace information. Rule 1. Assume roads are unsafe. Rule 2. Assume strangers are desperate. Rule 3. Assume infection exists in more than one form, even if I have only seen one. Rule 4. Never trade shelter secrecy for temporary comfort. Rule 5. Do not let loneliness push me into contact. Around week 10, I see the first helicopter. Not close. Far out over the valley, a tiny dark speck moving slow. I climb to the ridge for the first time in weeks, because that is not a normal sound. The helicopter moves left to right, then disappears behind terrain. No search pattern, no hovering, no drop. It does not come back. It could be military. It could be a private pilot. It could be someone fleeing. In the dead zone, even a helicopter becomes a question mark. The sight changes me more than it should. Not hope, not relief. It reminds me that the world still exists outside the bowl. That sounds obvious, but isolation dulls obvious things. For 2 days after, I catch myself planning to leave. Then I stop and force myself through chores until the urge passes. Planning without facts is gambling with my life. Winter sets in hard. Nights drop below 20 degrees Fahrenheit. The creek edges freeze thicker. I adjust my water collection so I do not have to break ice at dawn. I insulate my catch barrel. I build a second small shelter space, not for comfort, for redundancy. If a tree falls on my main shelter, I need somewhere to crawl. If a fire accident happens, I need a fallback. I do not trust a single point of failure. With snow on the ground, tracks become loud evidence. That helps and hurts. I can see where things move, but others can see mine too. I start brushing out my tracks near camp and stepping on rocks more. I stop walking in straight lines. I move under tree cover where snowfall stays patchy. I treat my own footprints as a leak. One afternoon, I spot a line of people far across the meadow edge, moving through trees in single file. 6, maybe 7, all carrying packs. One person on the end keeps lagging and getting shoved forward. The group does not enter the meadow. It moves around the bowl, using the timber and the east chute route. They never come close enough for me to see faces clearly. They move with intent, not wandering. That worries me more than infected. Intent means planning. Planning means people might start mapping these hidden places. That night, I move my backup cache again. I bury it deeper and farther, on the steep side where only someone looking hard would bother. I also remove anything from my camp that looks manufactured from a distance. No shiny metal, no bright color, no straight edges exposed. I cover everything. I even cover the spots where I split wood, because clean-cut marks stand out on fresh snow. Weeks pass. I stop counting them and start counting supplies. Coffee gets low, salt gets low. Ammunition stays fine because I rarely shoot. That is good. Gunshots invite questions. I trap, fish, and conserve. I repair clothing with needle and thread. I keep my boots dry and treat the leather. I shave less, not for style, for less water use and less skin irritation. Every decision has a small cost, so I choose the costs I can afford. One morning, I wake to the sound of something heavy moving near the creek. I do not bolt upright or narrate panic. I slide out of the sleeping bag, pull on boots, and move into position inside the shelter where I can see the entrance slit. I hold still and listen. The sound repeats, a grunt, a scrape. I catch a glimpse through branches. A black bear is pawing at the remains of an old fish cleaning spot I thought I had buried well enough. It is not aggressive. It is hungry. Hunger makes animals bold, and winter makes hunger constant. The bear turns its head toward my shelter area, sniffing. I stay still. I do not want it curious. I wait until the bear moves away. Then I take action. Not with a gun, with prevention. I move my waste system farther, bury deeper, and scrub the area with boiled water. I hang my food higher. I stop storing anything scented near sleeping area. I do not need a bear deciding my shelter is a pantry. A week later, I hear something else. Human footsteps crunching snow. Slow, careful. One person. I move into my observation point and watch the approach route. A man appears at the edge of the meadow, wearing a heavy jacket, carrying a pack, no rifle visible. He looks around, then raises both hands, palms out, and speaks toward the timber. I know you are here. I saw your work. He keeps his voice controlled. I do not want your place. I do not want your food. I just need to know if there is a way out. I have been walking for days. I lost my group. He stands there and waits. He does not step forward. He does not call again. He just keeps looking into the trees, trying to find the shape of a person. I watch him closely. His posture is tired. His hands tremble slightly from cold. He looks thin. He looks human. That is not enough. I stay hidden for several minutes. Then I choose the same method I used before. I do not reveal myself. I place a small bundle in a visible spot near the creek. 2 packets of oats, a lighter, a folded note written in block letters. I place it, back away, and watch. The note says, "Do not stay here. Keep moving east through the chute. Water upstream. Do not camp in the meadow. I do not add explanations. Explanations invite questions. I do not sign my name. Names create attachments." The man sees the bundle and approaches carefully, scanning for movement. He reads the note, then looks up toward the timber. "Thank you," he says, quieter now. "I will go." He hesitates. "Is it over down there?" He asks the question toward the trees, toward me, toward the dead zone, toward anything that might answer. Nobody answers. He nods to himself, takes the bundle, and limps toward the east chute. I watch him disappear. Then I sit back and face the reality. I cannot answer his question. I do not know if it is over. I do not know if anything is rebuilding. I do not know if the valley has become a graveyard or a settlement. I only know what passes through my bowl, and what passes through my bowl is enough to keep me hidden. Spring comes slowly. Snow recedes in patches. The creek swells. I reinforce drainage again and check for rot. I inspect every knot and every anchor. I clean the roof cover and replace branches that have gone brittle. I take stock of seeds I packed without planning to use. Beans, squash, a small pouch of greens. I clear a tiny plot under partial canopy and plant cautiously. Not a farm, a supplement. I protect it with a simple fence that blends into deadfall. During the first warm stretch, I climb the ridge again. Not for radio, for sight. The valley is greener now, but there are scars. A burned strip along a hillside. A section of road with abandoned vehicles visible even from far away. Tiny metallic dots in a line. No traffic. No smoke columns that look controlled. No obvious signs of organized life. That does not mean nobody lives there. It means nothing big is moving. I take out the radio anyway, because curiosity is a stubborn animal. I extend the antenna. I turn the dial. Static. Then faintly, a voice appears for 3 seconds. A man reading something in a flat tone. I catch only 2 words. Restricted zone. Then the signal collapses again. I try to hold it, shifting position, raising the radio, lowering it. Nothing returns. I sit on the ridge with the dead radio in my hands and feel the shape of the choice I made months ago. I built a refuge where no signals reach. It did exactly what I wanted. It cut misinformation off. It cut panic off. It cut hope off too. Hope often rides on other people's voices. Without voices, hope becomes a private act, something you build from chores and small victories. I hike back down and put the radio away. I return to the tasks that do not require broadcasts. I weed my small plot. I check traps. I filter water. I repair clothing. I sharpen tools. I keep the shelter clean. I keep my perimeter quiet. I stay invisible. Later that week, I find a crude marker near the east chute. 3 stones stacked and a piece of cloth tied to a branch, faded blue. A sign that somebody wants others to find the route. I remove it. I scatter the stones. I take the cloth and burn it in a controlled small fire, then bury the ash. I do not want my bowl becoming a waypoint on somebody's map. By summer, my routine is solid. I still see people sometimes, always at a distance, moving through the timber corridors. I still see infected sometimes, wandering without purpose, drawn by noise or scent, then leaving. I never fight unless forced. I never announce myself. I help in small, deniable ways when I can do it safely, because I am still a man and not a machine, but I do not pretend that makes me good. It just makes me functional. The outside world remains a blank page. That is the price. Ignorance is not comfort. It is simply one less source of manipulation. Out here, nobody can lie to me through a screen. Nobody can sell me false certainty. Nobody can whip me into panic for clicks. Out here, danger arrives on foot, and I can hear it coming if I keep my discipline. On the 1-year mark, or what I think is the 1-year mark, I sit in my shelter with a pencil and paper and write down what I know for sure. The creek still runs, the seasons still shift, people still move through the mountains, infected still exist, guns still fire in the distance sometimes, smoke still rises now and then. The rest is guesses. I read the list twice, then fold the paper and put it in a sealed bag with other notes. Not a diary for feelings, a record for decisions. If I die here, I want the next person who finds this place to understand what worked and what failed. That evening, I walked the perimeter one more time, resetting lines, checking bell placements, fixing a knot that is worn, and smoothing out my tracks near camp. The bowl is quiet. The dead zone holds. Somewhere beyond the ridges, the world is either rebuilding or burning or something in between, and I cannot know it from here. I return to the shelter before dark, close the entrance, and sit with my back against the log wall, listening to the creek and the wind in the trees. I do not make promises about the future. I do not pretend I will go back down next week or next month. I simply commit to another day of work, another day of being hard to find, another day of staying alive without the comfort of a voice telling me what is true.